Welcome to Industry Focus, the podcast that dives into a different sector of the stock market every day. Today is Thursday, May 26, 2016, so we're talking about energy, materials, and industrials. I'm joined by Motley Fool analyst Taylor Muckerman, and in following through on this week's life cycle theme, we're going to be talking about the lifetime journey of a barrel of light sweet crude oil. So how's it going, Mr. Muckerman?
It's going well. Swimmingly.
Swimmingly. So I guess since this is life cycle week and we're talking about the journey that a barrel of oil goes on from being in the ground to, we probably won't get all the way to the gas tank, but
that's for another day.
Another day. But should we start in the beginning with like a dinosaur dying or something 300 million years ago?
If you want to walk us through the biology and the chemistry side of how it became oil, sure.
I think I took my last chemistry class about 16, that would have been in high school. I don't know, 14 years ago, something. Anyway, we obviously won't get too much into the chemistry or anything like that. But, okay, so let's just pretend, let's talk about exploration first. Because there's oil in the ground, it's there, we don't know how deep it is. How do companies go about finding it?
Well, they have data, size. They use seismology. The geographic regions just are kind of conducive to oil, so you can kind of target certain areas of certain countries that you know are more likely to have it than not. But then once you get into it, they're using lasers. They're using
lasers?
Discovery wells.
Where do I get one of these?
I don't know. If the fool's paying you enough to buy one of those lasers, I need to switch jobs.
They wasn't it that like Drake's well in Pennsylvania, they like basically drilled there because there was like a natural pool of oil like hanging out somewhere. That's how they found oil 130 years ago.
That was
basically.
The lowest of the low hanging fruit.
Got it.
Yes.
That was okay. Got it. You know, the thing's still pumping, by the way.
Is it really?
Yeah. I went there on like a road trip because me and my friend were huge nerds. And it produces like 12 barrels a year or something.
Yeah, that's the old decline curve for you.
So how much money let's just pretend you have X dollars of a CapEx budget. If you have some examples, great. But how much of a CapEx budget goes to going out and finding the oil?
So for a producer, let's just say look at U.S. exploration and production. So looking at just U.S. spending this year, estimates of $73 billion will be spent on exploration and drilling. And the remainder of that will be from the production side. So you're looking at $73 billion for just exploration and drilling, and expectations of $87 billion total. So
big chunk, 80%.
Yeah, that's a big chunk, and exploration being the largest of that. Drilling, it's expensive, but finding this oil is arguably the hardest and most expensive.
Yeah, it's the riskiest part.
Yeah, right. And those totals that I gave you are both down. The $73 billion for exploration and drilling, down 40% from last year. And last year, 2015, was down 37% from 2014. So we're seeing big numbers. $73 billion is a lot of money, but it's small pittance compared to what we were spending in 2014, 2013, 2012.
Got it.
Yeah.
Has the cost of exploration through technological advances come down at all?
Somewhat. Depends on where you're exploring, right? Like if you're in a familiar area, like if you're in Texas or...
I was about to say in the Permian.
Saudi Arabia, somewhere where they're already producing a lot of oil. Not necessarily as bad, but if you go offshore, not only is it expensive, but it's risky because you have oil fields, but at the same time, it costs a heck of a lot of money to drill that first discovery well. And then you have appraisal wells to see, hey, maybe discovery wells finds the oil. Appraisal wells determine maybe how much you're going to produce from that well, and then between those two, then you determine, hey, we're going to go full bore and drill to the depths of this well and try and extract as much as we can, which in total really isn't that much because the average around the world, we're really only extracting about 35% of the oil that they're discovering.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's a lot left in there because technology. We just don't have it to extract all that. We're trying to extract more, and we've been getting better at that, but the global average is less than 40% coming out of the ground.
Yeah, and not only that, but sometimes wells are duds. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but they fail, especially in the offshore stuff. I hear all the time about like, we drilled here and there was nothing. Like,
they either find it and it produces and just not as much as they were expecting, or it just it's a total dud. You hear about, I feel like I hear about that less often now, thanks to companies like Core Labs that can really identify where, how, and when to produce this oil. And so
with science, mad science.
Science has really taken over this industry. It's no longer just brute force.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just pretend you and I, we'll call it Muckerman and O'Reilly producers or oil and gas. That's or something.
Fine.
We go out. We found some oil in the ground.
Yeah.
We our exploration guys were successful. Think there's, I don't know, 10 million barrels down there. How long are we gonna be leasing a rig? Like, how does the drilling process work? Because that does seem to be the next step in the life of a barrel of oil.
So companies like Halliburton and Schlumberger, and they've reduced the drilling time significantly. So we're looking at, a few days really now, where we're several weeks, thanks to pad drilling, where they basically put these drilling rigs on tracks, and they, instead of having to totally disassemble it for each individual well, they just leave it on tracks, and they just basically drive it to the next site, and it can start immediately. So
when you say tracks, are we talking like reusable railroad tracks, or
some of them use that? Some of them are just on glorified like bulldozer.
Okay, with the treads.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of them are on like a system where the track system where it's straight line, a lot of cubes. These are just aligned in like square plots, and then they just drive this thing around. And
taking a step back, if we had gone out and we're just over there in the Permian Basin in West Texas, and we're like, okay, we just bought this lease. We think there's oil down there. When we did the test well for the exploration, did Halliburton or Schlumberger give us that rig too? Like, who did that? Do we own our own?
Yeah. So some of the bigger companies will own their own rigs, but it's probably a small expenditure.
And is it just, do companies do that just to be more flexible? Like, they don't want to put up $50 million for the stupid rig. They'd rather just.
They're expensive, and like we've seen, rig use ebbs and flows.
Right.
So you kind of overexpose yourself to. I would imagine like only the super integrateds have an impactful number of rigs. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we drilled. Does it? What does it look like still? Like, you ever see There Will Be Blood, and like they drill the well, and no, not only the donkeys, but it just like explodes up when you strike oil and everything.
No. I mean, it's still dirty. They're still the workers are still coin roughnecks. I mean, it's still a very labor-intensive, dirty job, but thanks to technology and regulations that necessarily don't want oil spurting out of the ground willy-nilly and leaking gas. So you still see gas flaring, so you're still going to see the flames at a lot of these sites, that they're flaring off the gas that is coming out in increments too small to be monetized, which the government's cracking down on that as well, because it does release, harmful gas into the atmosphere. So but then again, like with all these wells, people think that they just produce forever, which they don't, especially in the U.S. with these shale wells. You're looking at, in the Bakken in particular, 70 to 80% decline rates in that first year. So you're seeing tremendous initial flows, like very, very impressive initial flows, but you have to keep drilling, which is kind of why we got into the mess we're in, is because companies had to keep drilling, because these wells they don't dry up. But 70% lost production in 1 year. After 4 years, you're down to 20%. Like, it's not good.
It's crazy, yeah. So how, obviously it's going to depend on the region we're in, so maybe throw out a few scenarios. But, okay, so our oil company for this barrel of oil that we're going out to find, Muckerman and O'Reilly.
I want more than one barrel, though.
You do? Well, fine. Anyway, stick with the theme, man. Throw out a couple scenarios, I guess, for like Permian and the Bakken and maybe offshore if you feel like it. How long until we have to actually drill again? Because I know with fracking, you can kind of like pull the rig back up and go another direction and all that stuff. But how long?
Yeah, you have the horizontal drilling, and these bits, they basically are, I can only imagine when virtual reality really sets in, and you're basically, you are the drill bit, just like following along. But yeah, you can drive these. I mean, they're making gradual directional changes, but they don't have to go. They're not going in straight lines anymore.
Right. Yeah. So you and I go out. We got this field in the Permian or whatever, and we drill. And there's the oil coming up. How long do you think until we have to drill again?
Well, you're looking at globally. If you stop drilling, these decline rates are going to impact anywhere from 5 to 10% globally. Probably on the lower end of that. Because the bulk of oil produced is mature fields, conventional oil like Saudi Arabia, the Middle East. Has very low decline rates compared
to
3%,
something like that.
So, and that's where the bulk of oil is coming from. So, outside of North American shale production, you're probably looking at maybe a 5% drop if no one produced for a year.
If nobody drilled another well.
Yeah, if no one drilled another
Understood.
well. Yeah.
Okay.
But demand supposedly increasing, and
plus 5% is 5%.
Yeah, that's a lot of oil.
You're producing 95 million barrels today. I mean, 5% of that would be 4.
That's a big crunch.
Yeah.
And so you would certainly see prices spike, which is why I don't think you're going to see a cease drilling ever.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of these, what Americans producers have been doing is drilling the well. They're just not fracking it. So they're doing the expensive part, which is the spudding, the drilling.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're just sitting on it, waiting for the right time.
They're storing it in the ground.
The best economical time to go ahead and frack the well, which is the explosion and the influx of sand and water or CO2 to then separate those fissures and allow the oil to free itself. So there's a lot right there behind the spigot. They just have to turn it on.
Got it. Okay. All right. So the next step in our journey, as I understand it, is actual production.
Yeah.
Okay. So we went out, we spent all this money and took all this risk finding the barrel of oil or the oil in the ground. We drilled for it. Now we have the production, which is the fruits of our labors. How hard is it to keep a shale well going? Because it's probably one of the more interesting things we could touch on. And what about one of those huge fields off the coast? Like, how hard is that to keep going? Because I found this one company, name escapes me, but there's companies that specialize in helicoptering oil employees to these rigs and stuff.
Yeah, those companies have really been hurt as far as their stock prices are concerned, but that was a big business.
Yeah.
And it probably will be one day, unless something magical happens and we no longer rely on oil because offshore is the next big thing. Because there's a lot of oil there to be had, but it's expensive. And so the production side is relatively easy compared to the exploration and the drilling side, because the intense pressure is what keeps the oil flowing out. So really all they're doing, they're obviously it's one of the more serious sides of the business because we've all seen the oil leak in the Gulf of Mexico and smaller oil leaks around the country happen from time to time during the production phase. So it's equally as serious, if not more serious, but it's relatively easy. It's pretty much the hard work is done unless you're going to go back and refrac these wells, which is about to be a new thing where they're going to utilize the same wells, try and access more than just 35% of the oil underground. Also using enhanced oil recovery techniques like water flooding.
Pump some carbon dioxide.
Pump some water, pump some carbon dioxide. They'll backfill it, so they'll drill a separate hole where they'll only pump the water or the CO2 in, and that'll enter the well that they've already drilled and force that leftover oil there. There's even starting to add microbes into this water that somehow attach to the oil, and they make it more fluid so it removes itself from the well a little bit easier. So there's a lot of these new techniques that people are trying that are working. So the production side still has some maintenance if you want to extract more than just a typical well will pump out itself. But it's really all just about the pressure, which is what created the oil in the first place, heat and pressure. And so now you're releasing that. And so relative to the finding and the drilling, it's the easier part.
So you're talking about all these alternative newer methods, all that. Are there any companies that come to mind that are at the forefront of all that?
Devon Energy as a producer is most certainly. Schlumberger is talking about 10,000 or so wells that have been drilled in the last 5 years that are eligible for refracking. They think not eligible like somebody signed. Yes, this well can be refracked, but that would probably benefit from being refracked and have the right geology that would support it. So you're looking at the bigger players in this picture. Core Labs comes to mind as an assistant. They're not going to go out there and do the drilling, but they do all the core sampling. So if you have a well that maybe isn't producing like you thought it would, you can go in there and give them a core sample of the earth 6,000 feet below the surface, and they can analyze that and maybe adjust the grains of sand that you're using in terms of size, or the amount of sand that you're using, or the type of water, or the type of CO2, or whatever. They can analyze that and give you the ultimate specific nature of what you can drill with. It's very, very confusing. We toured Core Labs a couple years ago, and what they're doing there is quite outstanding. I can't imagine the business without companies like that. Because, you look at Exxon, Chevron, you would think that they're doing that in-house, but Core Labs actually had equipment from those companies that they were basically like, yeah, we give up. We'll pay you to do this. Here's our old equipment.
Wow.
And Core Labs went in and retrofitted it to make it operate like theirs. And it's funny, like the money that they said that those bigger companies were spending on this, like this equipment to analyze wells and things. Core Labs had built something better out of a regular washer and dryer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So Core Labs is just better at it because they specialize in it, which is why these
guys like that are needed for more advanced stuff.
Absolutely. Which you would think. So talking to them a couple years ago, the way that they're levered to offshore drilling, so when offshore drilling picks up, Core Labs might be a company to look at outside of the drillers like Ensco or Seadrill or Transocean or whatever. So
you keep mentioning offshore here today. Yeah. Do you actually think there's a couple of years down the road that's going to be big again?
I don't know how many years, but it will be big. I in my opinion, I don't want to say it is, but in my opinion, yes. Offshore will be a very big part of this industry.
Cool. All right. Well, that is it for the life cycle of a barrel of oil.
Upstream life cycle. Maybe we'll get to the pipelines and the chemical refineries and
gas stations
and internal combustion.
The show will culminate with the purchase of a hot dog at the gas station.
I'll take a taquito.
Oh God, 3 days old. All right. Well, thanks, man. We'll catch you later.
Appreciate it.
That is it for us, folks. If you're a loyal listener and have questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. Just email us at industryfocus@fool.com. Once again, that is industryfocus@fool.com. And as always, people in this program may have interests in the stocks that they talk about, and the Motley Fool may have formal recommendations for or against those stocks, so don't buy or sell anything based solely on what you hear in this program. For Taylor Merkerman, I am Sean O'Reilly. Thanks for listening, and Fool on.